Well, I worked for the National Endowment for the Humanities in the Office of Congressional Affairs in Washington, D.C. So something I really liked about what I did was that every single day we did a varied project. So, for instance, some days we did long-term work, which included planning the National History Days competitions Day on the Hill. And that's a research competition for middle school to high school students across the nation who they competed at the local and state levels, and they made it all the way to the Capitol. So we would show them around and take them to meet their congressmen and women and generally show them a good time. And then other days we would bring grant recipients to meet with their representatives and explain their projects, so a lot of veteran work. And that was something that I really enjoyed because I was able to see the different ways the humanities are being used and how creatively the work of the government is being done in smaller circles, just on like the most local levels of historical societies preserving a house of a poet that has really contributed to African American literature, or how the humanities have helped people dealing with mental illness in ways that you wouldn't expect. Well, I was fortunate because I had a lot of help from Dr. Montgomery. I don't think I could have done it otherwise, but I started the process, I think, over Christmas break before the summer that I used the grant. So a lot of drafts and reflection back and forth. I think the other interns were actually they had a pretty big impact on me because we spent a lot of time together, and I think in all we represented every single region of the country from like California to Utah to Boston, and we all had similar goals and interests. So we would share a lot about like resume tips or study tips, or just discuss like what we thought about what the work we were doing and our interests and general nerdy current event conversations. So it was really interesting to hear their perspectives. I think I learned, well, I was fortunate because I was able to see the government from a different perspective than I feel most people usually do when they do internships in DC. It tends to be on the Hill, and that's the political side of things. And I was in a grant-making government agency, so it's very important to be impartial. And sort of the day-to-day government administration work was what I dealt with. And so I learned a lot about how like all the different processes and people it takes to make something happen, and ensure that everything is happening fairly and honestly as well. But just being exposed to a lot of different scholarship through the work of the like certain research proposals the professors would submit for books, or just the work that the NEH was doing nationwide, I was able to learn a lot about how the humanities affect different populations. Well, something was more fun that happened, I guess, was that the Capitals won the Stanley Cup for the first time while I was there. So one time in the middle of the workday, they let us all go out to the National Mall and go to this big rally. I don't even watch hockey, but it was really fun to be a part of that. So it was surprising to me how many fun things they worked into the internship. So we would meet with museum curators, and they would show us around like the back sides of the National Postal Museum, or we had like a brown bag lunch with the management, or we went to the Congressional baseball game. So it was a good balance. I was expecting it to be very intensive, but we had fun too. I think that it helps me see another venue in which I could practice law, which is what I want to do, and versus just inside like a courtroom we're doing criminal law, you could see how it could fit into the government schema. I definitely would recommend it, especially for students who are really interested in working for the government in other capacities than just being a politician. And there are a lot of roles available for that because they gave us a pretty good amount of responsibility and enough variety that you're able to see a lot of different facets of the work life. I definitely would not have been able to do this internship without the Center for Humanities. So it made it possible for me, and it was an amazing experience. So I'm really grateful for that.